You know that satisfying moment when all the numbers line up? Bills covered, mortgage on track, maybe even a little left over. You look at your life and think, we're doing this right. That feeling right there is the trap. Most people think financial stress starts when money runs out. Well, in most marriages, it starts the moment your income stops being optional. And here's the thing. Most marriages don't fall apart because two people stop loving each other. They compress. The financial structure quietly removes choice. And once choice narrows, behavior starts to change. There's a third presence in a lot of households, and most couples never notice it. It doesn't speak. It doesn't argue. It doesn't raise its voice. It just runs the math. And slowly, without anyone realizing, it becomes the one making the decisions. You buy a house. You finance a car. You're carrying student loans. Maybe there's a credit card balance that never quite goes away. The payments fit your income. The spreadsheet works. Life looks responsible. You might even feel proud of it. But the moment long-term debt enters your household, part of your future income is already spoken for before you earn it. A mortgage assumes decades of consistent employment. Car loans assume uninterrupted monthly cash flow. Student debt assumes a career stability that hasn't actually happened yet, and nothing breaks at first. Salaries arrive, bills clear, promotions happen. From the outside, everything looks solid. The shift shows up the day something changes. You want to take a lower paying role. A relocation becomes possible. A career pause enters the conversation. And notice what happens. Before either of you even speaks, the numbers are already in the room. Certain outcomes just aren't realistic anymore. Not because you disagree, because the structure already decided. You see, debt doesn't argue with you. That's what makes it so effective. It just quietly defines what's possible, and once possibility narrows, behavior follows. Now, most people assume debt creates stress because money is emotional, and that explanation is comfortable. It keeps everything personal. But the deeper shift is mechanical as debt changes incentives. When your household carries large fixed obligations, payments that have to go out every month no matter what, income is no longer fully negotiable. A portion of every paycheck is committed before it arrives. And that changes how you evaluate every decision going forward. Think about two households earning the same amount. One carries minimal long-term obligations. The other has a large mortgage, 2 car loans, and student debt stretching 15 or 20 years. On paper, their income is identical. In practice, their room to move is completely different. In the low-obligation household, one partner can experiment. Hours can be reduced. A different industry can be tested. A temporary income dip is uncomfortable, but it's manageable. In the high-obligation household, continuity becomes priority number one. You may not say it out loud, but you feel it. Risk starts to look irresponsible instead of ambitious. A role change becomes a threat to stability. A relocation feels expensive before it feels exciting. And when continuity becomes essential, you start protecting stability above everything else. Over time, that pattern becomes identity. One partner becomes the stabilizer, the other becomes the flexible one. These roles are rarely assigned on purpose. They emerge from the structure. And whoever provides that stability becomes structurally significant. That significance may never be discussed, but it shapes how decisions get made, not loudly, quietly. If one income covers most of the fixed obligations, that income becomes indispensable. The person earning it may never say that out loud. They may not even feel it consciously, but indispensability changes the dynamic. Career risks get evaluated differently depending on who carries more structural weight. If losing one income would force immediate downsizing, selling assets, or cutting back your lifestyle, that income is protected, and protected income is rarely challenged. At the same time, the other partner adjusts in subtle ways. Risk-taking becomes lopsided. One career absorbs the uncertainty, the other defends continuity, and over time, that imbalance compounds. Who relocates for whose promotion? Who pauses their career when childcare costs exceed one's salary? Who chooses the safer industry over the more ambitious one? Who negotiates harder? And who compromises first? None of these decisions require conflict. They only require constraint. When fixed obligations are high, the household becomes optimized for stability. Optimizing for stability reduces experimentation. Less experimentation narrows your future earning potential. 10 years later, the impact is measurable. One career may have grown through calculated risk. The other may have grown through continuity. The difference won't feel dramatic in the moment, it'll feel rational. And that's the part most couples never see. And this dynamic is not random. It's increasingly common. A generation ago, fewer households were built on this much long-term debt. Housing prices were lower relative to income. Education debt was smaller and shorter. Benefits were more often tied to stable, long-term employment. One income could sometimes sustain a baseline lifestyle. Today, the architecture is different. Homes are purchased with larger mortgages relative to earnings. Degrees carry debt that stretches 20 years or more. Health insurance is tied to employment. Childcare costs rival secondary incomes in many cities, and the responsibility for retirement has shifted from employers to individuals. At the same time, labor markets have become more fluid. Layoffs are routine. Industries reorganize quickly. Contracts replace long-term guarantees. Income volatility, which basically means unpredictable swings in what you earn, is no longer unusual, even in high-paying fields. So households are doing something structurally complex. They're building long-term fixed commitments inside short-term employment environments. That mismatch doesn't create immediate crisis. It creates sensitivity, meaning your household becomes even more reactive to disruption, even small disruption. And when that sensitivity rises across millions of households at the same time, what feels personal is often systemic. Now, on the surface, financially strained marriages often look successful. Two incomes, a home in a desirable area, reliable vehicles, vacations booked months ahead, retirement accounts growing steadily. From the outside, everything signals progress. And you might be earning well. Say your household brings in $180,000 a year. After taxes, that might leave roughly $125,000 in usable income, depending on where you live. Now subtract what can't move. Mortgage, $4,500 a month. Property tax and insurance, $1,200. Two car payments, $1,100. Childcare or tuition, $2,000. Insurance, utilities, subscriptions, student loans, that's another $2,500 to $3,000. Which is somewhere between $9,000 and $11,000 a month that has to be paid before you negotiate anything else. Over a year, that's $108,000 to $132,000 committed just to keeping things running. Yes, you may still dine out. You may still invest. You may still travel. But notice something. Remove one income for 6 months. You're sitting at the kitchen table one evening. One of you says, "I hate this job." The sentence just hangs there. Neither of you responds right away because you both already know the math. The conversation shifts before it really begins. How quickly does the calculation change? Which expenses can actually move? Which ones are locked? How long before savings stop being growth money and become survival money? This is where high-income households feel pressure they didn't anticipate. The issue isn't how much you earn. It's how much of your life depends on earning it without interruption. If both incomes are required to sustain the structure, neither income is optional. And optionality is breathing room. Breathing room determines how you respond to disruption. Modern labor markets are volatile. Layoffs are normal. Contract renewals fail. Industries stall. Health issues reduce your capacity by 20% and shift everything. None of these events need to be catastrophic. Their impact depends entirely on margin. Financial strain consistently ranks among the top predictors of divorce in longitudinal studies, not because couples argue about money more, but because sustained pressure changes behavior over time. When most of your income is already committed, disruption doesn't feel like inconvenience. It feels like threat, and threat narrows thinking. Risk tolerance drops. Negotiation becomes more cautious, and you start evaluating opportunity through the lens of preservation instead of expansion. Now, the disruption didn't create the pressure. It simply revealed it. High fixed commitments make a household sensitive to volatility, and volatility is routine. During the stable years, that sensitivity stays invisible. During the unstable ones, it defines the outcome. That moment is often labeled stress. Structurally, it's exposure. Exposure to a system that required more continuity than reality could promise. And this is where normalization becomes dangerous. Because nothing feels urgent, the risk stays abstract. The household appears stable. In reality, it's become increasingly sensitive. And sensitivity doesn't reveal itself during expansion, it reveals itself during contraction. Inside a marriage, financial sensitivity shapes behavior long before it creates arguments. You may never fight about money directly, but you notice smaller things. You hesitate before suggesting a career change. You postpone a conversation about relocating. You calculate silently before supporting a risk. Not because you don't trust each other, because the structure requires protection. When both incomes are necessary to maintain the baseline, every major decision passes through preservation first. You're not negotiating freely. You're negotiating within constraints. And over time, repeated protection of stability reshapes ambition. It reshapes negotiation. It reshapes perceived power. That's why it can feel like a third presence in your marriage. Not because it speaks, but because it decides before you do. Now, seeing this doesn't eliminate debt. It does something more important. It separates personal failure from structural design. And once you see the structure, you stop asking, why do we feel this pressure? You start asking, what does our structure require from us? And that question changes how you think about freedom inside a partnership. Because love can survive volatility, but systems built without margin struggle too. And the difference between those two realities is rarely emotional, it's architectural.